The special meeting of the Annapolis City Council on Monday, June 22nd will be called to order at 7 p.m. At this time, would everyone please sit for the invocation given by Alderman Savage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as the council gathers here to make laws affecting the people of Annapolis, I ask you to lift your heads, open your eyes, and open your hearts. Let us remember that no matter the color of our skin, we are all connected by our common humanity and by our common love for Annapolis. Let that unite us and cause us to work together with wisdom, reason, and compassion for all those who reside in Annapolis.
Amen.
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 Thank you. Would everyone unmute and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please have the Boy Scouts do that in the future.
They really do it much better.
Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley?
Here.
Alderwoman Tierney?
Here.
Alderman Payon?
Here.
Alderwoman Pendell Charles?
Here.
Alderwoman Finlayson?
Present.
Alderman Rodriguez?
Here.
Alderman Gay? Alderman Gay?
Yeah.
Alderman Savage?
Present.
Alderman Arnett?
Present.
Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, please present the first item on the agenda.
Yes, sir. First item is approval of the agenda.
At this time, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended to add CA 2-20, City of Annapolis primary election date on first reader, and to remove R31-20 hiring freeze on second reader. Could I get a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley?
Yes.
Alderman Rodriguez?
Aye.
Alderman Gay?
Sorry, I was having a tech problem.
Alderman Savage?
Aye.
Alderman Arnett?
Present.
Alderwoman Tierney?
Aye.
Alderman Payon?
Aye.
Alderman Pendell Charles?
Aye.
Alderwoman Finlayson?
Aye.
Thank you.
And Mr. City Attorney, please present the next on the agenda. Mic's off. Your mic was off, Mr. City Attorney, sorry.
I'm sorry. The next item on the agenda is reports, petitions, reports, and communications, beginning with update from the mayor.
Thank you. Good evening. We've just finished the budget, and again, I want to thank everyone for participating in that process. This is a difficult time for our city, and our ability to navigate many competing demands and come out the other side is a testament to the collaborative spirit of residents, city staff, department directors, the finance officer, the city manager, and the council. We have a few items on the agenda tonight that I'd like to comment on before we get started. It is a presidential election year, and we have a new set of challenges because it doesn't look like coronavirus is going away anytime soon. Certainly not by the election general day in November. For our residents, they will be expecting us to get it right in order to protect the public health. For us, as a city, it is a dry run for our own election in 2021. I want us to be mindful of this and to think not only about election integrity, but also about convenience and how we can ensure and encourage participation by all voters. Tonight on the docket, we also have the confirmation of Michael Johnson to be our new Director of Public Works. Some of you council members took the time to meet with Michael and get to know him, and I thank you for that engagement. Michael is coming here in a busy time with the city dock plan, the takedown and rebuild of Hillman Garage, the Department of Public Works building on Hudson Street. It's an exciting time and lots of projects, but we know that he is up for this challenge. I would like to thank Acting Director Marcia Patrick, who has done a tremendous job navigating the DPW ship through this period. Well, when David Gerald left the BTW to become city manager, we had no idea that a pandemic was on the horizon. Marcia, your service to the city is recognized and truly appreciated. Later this week, yes, let's do a little round of applause for that. Thank you. Later this week, we have a town hall hosted by Alderwoman Finlayson on the topic, where do we go from here? Which will tackle race equity issues. I will be a participant, and Sheila, perhaps in a bit, you can tell us a little more about this. And finally tonight, this coming Sunday is the 2-year anniversary of the mass shooting at the Capitol Gazette that took the lives of Rebecca Smith, Wendy Winters, Gerald Fishman, Rob Hyacin, and John McNamara. Their loss and that horrific event continue to be a painful memory for this city. This year, we are having a virtual symposium to remember our friends who were lost and to continue the conversation. The event is called Local Matters Remembering, and it will begin at 10:30 a.m. on Friday, June 26th, and will go until noon. It will be a discussion about the state of the newspaper business, local and community news, and include keynote speaker Penny Abernathy of UNC Hussman School of Journalism, an introduction by Lucy Dalglish, and a lively panel discussion to include Rick Hudsell of the Capitol, County Executive Stuart Pittman, Martin Kaiser of Capitol News Service, Carl Snowden of the Caucus of African American Leaders, and Amy Mitchell of the Pew Research Center. It is free and open to the public, and we encourage you to share the feed on your own page. That will be on Facebook and YouTube live channels for the City of Annapolis at 10:30 a.m. this Friday. In addition, I want us to continue to think about and to fight the scourge of gun violence. Unfortunately, as we have seen in the past few weeks with a number of shootings in the county, we are seeing a resurgence. I respectfully ask our people to put down their weapons and find a better way to resolve differences. Last year, on the 1-year anniversary, we hosted a gun summit on the campus of St. John's College, where we talked about strategies to address gun violence. The county hosted a gun violence task force whose report recently came out, and I would encourage everyone to read that report and ask state and federal lawmakers to help us address this issue. At a local level, it is very difficult to fix, even though we are the ones who are left dealing with the consequences. In the past year in Annapolis, we have lost a number of people. Last June, we lost Montre, Trey the Kid. In July, Elijah Wilson. In October, we lost Tiara Taylor. In December, Sandy Campos. In March, we lost Leslie Saunders. And last month, Colin Flanagan. All the unfortunate victims of gun violence. If we could now, I would like us to take a moment of silence for the 5 lost in the Capitol Gazette shooting and the others lost in our city over the past year to gun violence. Thank you. Thank you all, and let us continue with the meeting. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda is reports by committees.
Anybody been doing anything else besides the budget that would like to report? Alderman Paone. Need your mic.
Thank you. I thought Ross was exercising his fingers there for a minute. The audit committee has been very busy. In the meantime, we are presently honing some legislation that we think is well needed for us to complete our task that we have been given by the council and by the then mayor. We will be emphasizing in the future large projects, but smaller projects perhaps than we've tried to bite off so far, rather than perhaps, although occasionally we'll be looking into an entire department and the proceedings therein. We'll also be looking into particular projects within departments and making sure that the right performance metrics are being applied and to any given program. We'll also have a new member coming up as of July 1. Julie Mussog will be leaving us. We are presently actively searching for a new member, civilian member. If anyone has someone they could suggest, by all means, let me know. The way it works is they have to be nominated by an alderman. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, it's one of the few times we have that, and then approved by the council, the mayor and the council as a whole. Things are looking up. You know, it's first time in a long time I've really said that, but we will be meeting virtually again next Monday at 8 o'clock in the morning and go till about 9:30 or so. That's it.
Thank you. Alderman Savage had his hand up.
Yeah, just wanted to inform the public that the last Environmental Matters Committee, we did not hold it, but we're trying to do a joint meeting with Rules and Government. And I think we're getting close to scheduling one for the next week or the week after to talk about 2 ordinances that are going before both of the committees. One is the proposed reorganization for the environmental efforts, and the other is some adjustments to our harbor laws.
Thank you. Alderman Finlayson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. You mentioned in your presentation, in your report, about our town hall on Wednesday. So I'll take this opportunity to invite the community to our town hall. The theme is, where do we go from here? There's been lots of discussion about what our problems are. And so this group that I will announce shortly will be starting the discussion to help us create, I hope, an actual action plan on things that we can physically do to help our community and to help us make our community the place we want to call home and feel safe. On that panel will be, of course, our Mayor, Gavin Buckley, the Police Chief, Jackson. To represent the younger perspective, I have Alderman Dwan Gay. We'll also be joined by Alderman Rodriguez to help us understand any issues dealing with the Hispanic community. Carl Snowden, representing the Caucus of African American Leaders. Jackie Alsop with the NAACP. The ACLU, Amy, I hope will be a part of our dialogue. And then I have a couple of community leaders, Dr. Fairley from the Community Action Agency, and Mr. Dillard, who is a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, a very engaged fraternity in our community, and also the principal of one of our elementary schools, Georgetown East. So we will be inviting questions, but I am asking all of the participants to come with suggestions of exactly what we could be doing, not only as an elected official, but as the community, to help bridge the gap in our community and bring us all into one, as one Annapolis, as the mayor says all the time. So that's Wednesday, this Wednesday at 7 o'clock. It's a Zoom meeting and the flyers are out. So go to the city website and get the information on how to participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Finlayson. Anyone else with a report? Thank you all. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, the next item on the agenda, sir, is a written testimony for the general public. From the general public. To view actual comments, please visit www.annapolis.gov/public testimony.
And we have received written testimony, general comments from the following persons. Manon Shandlin, 303 Washington Ave, Annapolis, Maryland. And Charles Parker, 141 West Street, Annapolis, Maryland. Thank you all. Mr. City Attorney, please.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Alderman Savage.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to kind of ask if we had any kind of update on kind of trying to adjust some of our public testimony during this time. I'm trying to figure out what jurisdictions are doing what, but I was told that some of them are starting to allow the public to sign into Zoom and they have a timer that they see on the screen and they get to kind of, go over their comments in person. So just not sure if we're working on that or not.
Yep, we were discussing it today and we will we'll be piloting it in July. Before the end of the break, but it'll be a good chance to give it a test run. So we will have it across the line, and I'm sure we'll have to make adjustments. The county made adjustments with their process, and we will probably have to as well, but it'll be good to actually get that out there because I know the public is really looking for that.
Yeah,
Alderman Annette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make sure that we have that email address correct. I think it's www.annapolis.gov/1680/public-testimony. I want to make sure that's right because I've been getting a lot of inquiries from constituents saying they don't seem to be able to find the right address. And that's the one that's in our agenda for tonight. And that's what I've been sending out on my emails. But I really want to, I guess, with the city clerk, make sure that that is the correct address.
So let's get Regina to clarify it, please.
I'm sorry, 2 microphones. That is the address that I was given, and I copied it right from the email from Enna. So that is the one that works. And actually, I know it works because I received those 2 names that the mayor read earlier today via that link.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Public testimony.
So I'll repeat again the one our city attorney just announced. It is for everybody out there, www.annapolis.gov/public testimony. I don't see any numbers on this one in front of me. This is the one that Regina received today. So this is the one we're using now.
I just pulled it up, Mr. Mayor. It works. as
All right,
identified.
so in our agenda, after gov, we have /1680/public testimony. So we've still got more than one floating around.
Let me get Regina to explain.
Hold on one second. Hold on for a second. Julian is going to speak right now.
Okay.
So they are both the same link and both do work.
Oh, yeah, it's slightly different.
Okay.
So the 1680 is just where the path it travels through on the website.
Yeah. And
Okay, but both of those, Alderman Arnett, please tell your constituents or the constituents who are watching that both of those work. Is that right, Julian?
Yes, and just so also you guys know, for the actual viewers, there's actually on the lower half of your screen, there's actually the address as well, and that we've confirmed that absolutely does work. And that's visible and visible on Facebook, YouTube, and on the city's TV station.
I just saw Ross looking down at the bottom of his screen just then.
Not on your guys's.
Yeah,
Alderman Tierney?
thank you.
Actually, there is something there that says leave. I'd like to do that.
I just want to offer that there might be confusion because there's one link for submitting testimony, and then there's the other link for viewing testimony. So that might be the confusion. I'm not sure. Ross is still shaking his head.
Again, so we actually, even while this is being broadcast, both links are being showed to the public on both social media and on the city's broadcast. So there's the link to read and one link to submit, and they're both being shown.
So the public that are watching, Alderman Arnett can take it off the screen. You can send the one you have and also the one I just announced, and both of them will work. Thank you.
we just created the shorter one to help.
And I think it's an evolving process, so I think they shortened it a little bit there as we moved forward. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda is approval of the consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar, and I'll read them, include legislative actions for first reader, 02420, deadline for absentee ballots, referred to the Rules and City Government Committee, 02520, conveyance of city-owned rights-of-way in Newtown 20, 02620, rent increases during state of emergency prohibited, referral to Housing and Welfare Committee, 02720, other excluded service employees, referred to the Rules and City Government Committee, R3420, Community Development Block Grant Program 2020, amended citizen participation plan, referred for a public hearing, R3520, 2021 election, then second readers, 01920, City Council public hearings, business and miscellaneous ID 181-20, renewal towing licenses for top-notch towing and transport, ID 182-20, renewal towing license for JP Towing Services LLC, and that would end the consent calendar.
Alderman Arnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is not R3720 also on the consent calendar? I'm looking at the agenda I printed out.
Regina.
That's gone now.
Alderman Arnett, it is on the agenda. It is on the bottom of your agenda because there was a request from the city manager it's the appointment of the Public Works Director. Is that what you're speaking of?
Yes.
Yeah, it's on the bottom because there's a request to suspend the rules tonight. So as you look down, not on your paper agenda, it is later on the agenda. We had to take it off of the consent.
I need to make a general comment. It does seem like this jumps around quite a bit. I tried to download it as soon as it's sent out so I can do my blast email, but over the weekend I updated it and it changed. And again, tonight it's changing. It's very hard to keep track of this, and I think it's got to be hard for the public too. I hope we're going to have some rules where once we promulgate it, it stays stable unless we amend it at the council meeting?
I agree.
Regina supports you 100% on that.
I support you 100%. Thank you, Alderman Arnett.
So I would like to ask that O2520, R3420, R3520, and R3820 be removed from the consent calendar. And I would move approval of the consent calendar with that amendment, those amendments.
Madam City Clerk.
Hold on, Alderman Arnett, could you repeat that again so we can make sure we have the right ones removed? O25.
Yeah. O25, R34, R35, and R38. R38 isn't on second reader, okay. Okay. Thank you.
Alderman Savage.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I just wanted to pull out O1920. I just have a question about it.
Okay, sure. So we'll move that to the back. You got those, Regina?
I'm sorry, was Alderman Savage, was your request to remove O1920 from the consent calendar?
Correct.
And Alderman Arnett, for clarity purposes, R38 is not on the consent calendar.
Where is it?
It's on the bottom of your agenda under first readers.
Oh, all right. So let me find that. See, that's the problem with these changes. It's very hard to keep track of all of this. I don't. Okay, there it is under first readers. Thank you. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Then it's already removed from the consent calendar. So you were way ahead of me.
We were reading your mind.
So could we clarify that? Could we clarify that again, Regina? What do you have for removing from the consent calendar?
The items requested to be removed from the consent calendar is O2520, O2520, you have R3420, R3520, and O1920.
Is that it for everybody? Those 4 items?
Yep.
All right.
So
I understand a motion to approve the consent calendar as amended.
So moved.
Regina, did you say something?
Alderman Arnett already moved it. We just needed a second.
Second.
Okay.
Thank you.
All those in, Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley?
Yes.
Alderman Rodriguez? Alderman Gay? Alderman Savage?
Aye.
Alderman Arnett?
Aye.
Alderwoman Tierney? Alderman Payon? Alderwoman Finlayson? I'm sorry, Alderwoman Kendall Charles?
Aye.
Alderwoman Finlayson?
Aye.
Thank you. And the consent calendar has been approved.
The City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda is public hearing continued, beginning with O1520, Waterfront Mixed Maritime District, for the purpose of allowing professional offices in the WMM zoning district in accordance with certain standards, amending certain parking standards, and making stylistic changes.
We have received no comments from the public on this, but I'm sure Ross has one.
I do. I just want to take note that the Maritime Advisory Board has met twice on this, has 2 different sets of recommendations. I'm very much in sympathy with what they're recommending, and I would direct the public's attention. They can find the Maritime Advisory reports on the city website.
Any other comments? I declare the public hearing on O-15-20 closed. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, sir. Public hearing continued, O2020, Deputy City Manager for Resilience and Sustainability, for the purpose of establishing the position of Deputy City Manager for Resilience and Sustainability, providing for certain terms of employment and compensation, clarifying duties and responsibilities, transferring certain environmental programs and activities, and generally related to establishing the Deputy City Manager for Resilience and Sustainability position.
Again, we have received no comments from the general public this week. We got a lot last time. Alderman Gay.
I'm just checking to see if we're still working on the description of that role.
I think it's going to, let me get David Gerald to comment on that. Mr. City Manager.
I guess I'm not sure I understood the question.
I think at the first meeting in June, when we postponed this, part of during the dialogue, I asked that we have some description of what this role would be, and then also a description included within the legislation and how they would report underneath of the city manager and how that operation would work. Because that wasn't made clear. It was only verbally, told to us. It wasn't put in writing.
Yeah, so we've amended the staff report to add that type of description. As far as the reporting relationship, I can certainly show an org chart, but that position will report directly to the city manager and have one subordinate.
Okay, Alderman Savage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to point out that I believe this and CA 120 were closed earlier this month.
Okay. I declare the public hearing on O-50, Regina, sorry.
Just to clarify, Alderman Savage, the mayor closed them on the 8th, and then you guys voted to extend it until the 22nd. And that's why they're on the agenda today, to keep the public hearing open until today.
So we are declaring the public hearing on O-15-20 closed. Oh, sorry, 2020 closed, sorry. Apologize, sorry. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item is public hearing continued on CA 120, Deputy City Manager for Resilience and Sustainability. This is a charter amendment.
Okay, so same thing again. We've received no comments. I declare the public hearing on CA 1-20 closed. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item is public hearing on O-2120, the conveyance of city-owned property for the purpose of approving the conveyance of certain city-owned property to 113 Cathedral Street LLC, expressly authorizing said conveyance to be made at private sale and not at public auction, expressly finding that the city-owned land to be conveyed is not needed for public use, and generally related to said conveyance.
Alderwoman Tierney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is O-2220?
2120.
120.
Is it the city-owned property?
Yes, Cathedral Street. Yeah.
Yeah, I received an email. He didn't put it in the public testimony format, and I've neglected to forward that to Regina. Can I still do that for the record?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
Okay, I declare the public hearing on O-2120 closed. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, the next item is public hearing on O-2220, conveyance of city-owned property for the purpose of approving the conveyance of city-owned property to Kathleen Wolfel, Carol Thames, and Sandra Wolfel, co-trustees of the Survivors Trust created under the Wolfel Living Trust, expressly authorizing conveyance at a private sale, not a public auction, and expressly finding that the city-owned land to be conveyed is not needed for public use.
Again, we have received no comments from the public. I declare the public hearing on O-2220 closed. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, public hearing on O-2320, payment for city services. For the purpose of establishing a fine for dishonored checks and other written instruments, establishing a convenience fee related to accepting payments over the phone or online and establishing a penalty for late payment of sewer service bills.
Alderman Gay.
Yeah, there was little public comment on this, but I just wanted to quickly point that once it does finally get to the voting phase of this, I would completely disagree with this. I understand that there's a financial incentive for the city of approximately $5,000, but I just disagree with charging people who are in some apparent need of money. I'm assuming that if your check bounces or something like that, there obviously are some financial issues, and that's why we get mad at big banks like Bank of America, who have gathered $2 billion over years for charging people overdraft and fees and things like that. They're already broke or having financial issues, so I don't think that we should penalize them any further. I just wanted to add that to the comment.
Thank you. I declare the public hearing on O-23-20 closed. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, the next item on the agenda, sir, is R3720, Director of Public Works. Michael Johnson, PE, for the purpose of expressly confirming his appointment as Director of Public Works and consenting to the compensation for that position.
Is there a motion to adopt R-37-20 on first reader?
So moved.
Second.
So, Dave, do you have any, is he out there?
Yeah.
Out there. Yeah, I have just a few comments real quick. So as most of you know, we conducted a national search for this position. It's one of our most important positions, obviously. We got very, very good response. We were very pleased with the response that we got from the national search. It was a competitive process. We had a screening committee that separated those into smaller groups, whom then the mayor and I interviewed. Mr. Johnson was the one selected. As far as the charter requirements go, so the first charter requirement is knowledge and experience in civil and sanitary engineering works with greater than 5 years in an executive or supervisory capacity. Mr. Johnson has been a public works director for larger cities than Annapolis since January of 2008. From January 2008 to May 2014, he was the public works director for East Orange, New Jersey, which is just outside New York City. Since May 2014 to present day, he has been the public works director for Gaithersburg, Maryland. The next requirement is a degree in civil engineering. He has an undergrad degree in civil engineering from the City College of New York. He also has a master's degree in operations research from Columbia University in New York City. The last requirement is that he either be or be able to become a registered professional engineer in the state of Maryland, and he has that qualification. So we believe that he meets or exceeds all qualifications of the position and is very, very well qualified for this position.
And for any of you that didn't get a chance to sort of say hi, do you want to say a couple of words, Mike?
Sure. Thanks, Mayor.
Hi.
David. Hi, Alderman PM. Good evening, aldermen and alderwomen. I'm glad to be joining the city of Annapolis. It sounds like a really exciting time to be joining the city. You're doing a lot of important and exciting projects. And I have an extensive experience in dealing with capital programs, as well as in managing public works departments and bringing a variety of innovations and innovative ways of thinking to solving the problems that public works departments face and that cities face in the discharge of the responsibility of maintaining and improving their infrastructure. And I'm looking forward to having the opportunity to bring that skill set to the city of Annapolis and to work collaboratively with my colleagues and the mayor and council and David to fulfilling that goal. I'm open for any questions I think I spoke with most of the aldermen and alderwomen, and I think there were two I did not have the opportunity to meet with. So if there are any questions, I'm available to answer them.
Alderman Savage has his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, and sorry, we didn't have an opportunity to speak. I've been a little busy with the budget here lately. So I do regret that, but so I am the chair for the Environmental Matters Committee. And so that's kind of, I just wanted to ask you about that generally in terms of, because our public works plays a very large and central role in helping us meet our water quality goals and targets, reviewing new development that comes in to make sure they're compliant with our stormwater management regulations, and also doing enforcement of our pollution prevention. And not to mention, as I'm sure Alderman Tierney has mentioned to you, in terms of preparing ourselves, in terms of preparing our infrastructure for sea level rise from climate change. So, yeah, I just wanted to get a better feel of some of your background in that regard and what your approach would be in terms of addressing those issues.
In the prior positions that I've had, I have focused a lot on attempting to green, if you will, the operations of the Public Works Department. For instance, in the past, in the city of East Orange, New Jersey, I introduced, we were the first city in Essex County, which is the county that they're in, to introduce the use of brining of the roadways. And the purpose of brining is that it's really a salt saver. Now, salt, while essential for roadway safety in the winter, can also be a contaminant if not spread. Properly can damage macroinvertebrates and affect water quality. So by introducing brining, we were able to reduce the quantity of salt that has to be dispersed during the winter months. And in Gaithersburg, they had a brining system, but I was able to sort of modernize that. It was an older system, one of the earlier ones. One of the problems with that is that you have to have very skilled staff to get the correct percentage of salt that is in the mix. And if you get it wrong, it can ice the road. So we went to an automated system that allowed us to utilize that. In Gaithersburg as well, I also introduced a pesticide policy. There was a desire from the Environmental Affairs Committee for reduction in the use of pesticides, and particularly the one that is sort of in the news a lot, Roundup. So Gaithersburg has a lot of green space, and of course coming with that are broadleaf weeds, which are difficult to control without Roundup. The items that are on the OMBRE list, the sort of green items, really sort of do a superficial burn of the leaves, and they don't actually kill the root. So it is something that you have to spray a lot of. Roundup is effective in killing the root, so it effectively kills the weed. But we decided that around sensitive populations such as schools and playgrounds, that we would introduce a policy whereby we would not use Roundup or limit Roundup use, so that we minimize the opportunities for growing children or people with kids or kids of any age to really be exposed to that out of a preponderance of caution. I think the jury is still out as to whether or not Roundup is really as bad as some groups say it is, but just as a preponderance, utilizing preponderance of caution, we use that. I also work extensively with with the green. We had within Public Works, we had a sustainability coordinator. That was a new position that was introduced into the department, and working with the sustainability coordinator, her goal was to introduce sustainability across the entire organization. So we started our own shredding event. We did e-waste removal and sort of recycling, and worked a lot with the schools on green up days, sort of trying to get the strategy really being that if you teach a young child to sort of be environmentally conscious, you sort of are going to produce an adult a few years down the road, 10 or 15 years down the road, who is really attuned and really, intuitively understands the importance of sustainability. They also are useful in sort of that children tend to influence their parents. We found that to be so that while some parents may not be as environmentally conscious, if their kids are doing it or if their kids are getting involved with those sorts of activities, it's something that helps them to sort of for the community's culture to shift towards a more sustainability and environmentally sensitive one. So I have a lot of experience and various thoughts as to how public works departments, which are sort of, low-hanging fruit for improving their footprint, their environmental footprint, with the caveat being that it has to be balanced. The primary goal is not, we can't eliminate salt. There's no good substitute for that, but we can reduce the use of it. We do have to use some chemicals, right? So, but we can find ways to do it in a way that doesn't really impact the environment in a really deleterious fashion. So I don't know if that really answered. It's sort of a longer answer, but I don't know if that was satisfactory for you.
Yeah, it was good. And just, I guess, just follow up on, I see you do have some experience with MS4 compliance.
Yes.
From your other work in other jurisdictions.
Correct. Now within, now stormwater was a division within the Public Works Department in Gaithersburg as well, and in New Jersey. Now the Maryland stormwater MS4 permit is more developed, I would say, than the New Jersey permit, and probably has something to do with the Chesapeake Bay, with the, it's a bit more important to the economy of the state. But stormwater, I sort of had to sort of build the stormwater program within the Gaithersburg, because when we started with 3 people, with a person heading it, an inspector, and 1 engineer. And right now we have 3 stormwater engineers, a water resource specialist, inspectors, and some GIS support. And we're in the first. We just completed the first. We're in the first year, of the phase 2 permits, and we are sort of working through. We did our first annual report, and we actually introduced an innovative way of calculating the credits that MDE was found to be interesting, and would probably allow other jurisdictions to use. So that was something that the staff did that was quite good. And we're sort of ramping up our IDDE program, which is the illicit discharge detection and elimination program, and rewriting our stormwater ordinance to be more reflective of the changes that the permit, because it was sort of an older permit. I think Gaithersburg was a little ahead of Montgomery County in terms of developing their stormwater ordinance, and Montgomery County is the model that the EPA used and sort of became the MS4 IDA in the United States. So their ordinance was a bit dated, so we had to modernize it. So we have a work group that is actually working on that currently, and we're pretty close to completion with that. So yes, I have worked with the MS4 program.
Great, thank you, Mr. Johnson.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Alderwoman Tierney.
Yeah, very quickly. I had the opportunity to meet Mr. Johnson. Thank you, City Manager Jarrell. And I think that was because when David Jarrell was vacating the position, I showed my panic that we had this vacancy. And a couple of things on meeting him was the experience with the MDE, and I spoke of, always, from a construction standpoint, when a project was in Montgomery County, we used to panic that there was this very stringent MDE requirement. And but then it's very balanced, because he has, from his East Orange experience, he's dealt with brown sites and green sites, and that's a very good balance. But what was most important was his emphasis on collaboration, and that was so refreshing to hear that how important it was in the beginning of projects to have the each department, and he may develop a way of doing this, to have each department look at a project from different perspectives and address problems early on, as well as balancing that with input from the public. So I was really pleased to hear that. And again, thank you for the opportunity in meeting you. You look very different without your mask on.
A little bit.
I know we all do.
It was a pleasure meeting you too, Alderwoman.
Thank you.
Alderman Gay had his hand up.
Thank you. Yeah, I had a chance to speak with him briefly the other day too, and I'm ecstatic that he's here. I'm looking forward to it. I just want to speak to some highlights of his resume that I think will really assist us. We talked about, when we actually met, we talked about career path training and stuff like that. And I didn't even notice it, but it's the second thing listed on his resume: develop and implement a career path program for line staff. And that's so important here in our city. He also overseen the design and construction of a synthetic sports field. And I think that's important as we talk about what will happen with the property off of SPA moving forward. What else? There was one more, or there were two other things that were really impressive to me. Oh, the development and implemented 12 million annual. Oh no, that's also special. But there was one more thing that you had talking briefly just about overseeing railroad projects. And I think that's critical because that's transportation that is the future. That's transportation that really could connect our city and take us to the next level, so that you have that background knowledge. That's awesome. And then also you did a short course at the Harvard Kennedy School. So you're great, and I look forward to you being a part of the city.
Thank you, Alderman. Look forward to it too. Thank you.
So, Alderman Pindell-Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank Mr. Johnson for our meeting the other day. It was very fruitful. I was very impressed, not only by his resume, but by the conversation. And one thing I want to mention, and we know that Public Works is one of our larger departments. And I had spoken to Mr. Johnson about oftentimes our rank and file, as you might want to call it, within certain organizations, to keep in touch with the individual and staff and employees. And one of the suggestions I had was every now and then just kind of talk to each one individually, find out what their concerns are, just give them the comfort and satisfaction that someone is listening to them. Not that we haven't had that in the past, but just passing that piece of information on, because sometimes we get, to the point where we don't really, and I'm not saying we do, but sometimes we get to the point we're not really listening to all of our employees. And there's a comfort level in knowing that the supervisor, the big supervisor, is there to listen and to take suggestions and all that. And Mr. Johnson was very readily agreeable to doing that. And I thank him so much for that. And so thank you, Mr. Johnson. I look forward to working with you and continue with your staff as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Same here.
So he had me when he said he builds bridges. So we have a motion and a second on first reader. All those in favor with a show of hands say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay. Anyone opposed? Is there a motion to suspend the rule to allow passage of a resolution at the meeting of its introduction?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Mr. Lovefest here. All those in favor say aye. Oh, do we have to call the roll? So all those in favor say aye with a show of hands. Anyone opposed? Okay, we can do it then. Is there a motion to adopt R-37-20 on second reader?
So moved.
So moved. Second then.
Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley.
Big yes.
Alderman Rodriguez.
Aye.
Alderman Gay.
Yes.
Alderman Savage. Alderman Savage.
Aye.
Alderman Arnett.
Aye.
Alderwoman Tierney.
Aye.
Alderman Payon.
Aye.
Alderwoman Pendel Charles.
Aye.
Alderwoman Finlayson.
Aye.
That motion carries.
Welcome aboard, Mike. We look forward to all working with you. And I love what you talked about building morale in departments. It was really impressive. So looking forward to it.
Thank you, Mayor and members.
Welcome.
Thank you. Look forward to it.
We'll build on the bridges, though.
Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item is R3820, Position Classifications and Pay Plan, for the purpose of approving FY 2021 position classifications and pay plan and specifying an effective date.
So a motion to adopt R38-20 on first reader.
So moved.
Second.
Alderman Arnett, discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'd like this to be referred to the Finance Committee.
Madam City Clerk?
I'm sorry, there was a request that this, the rules be suspended for this because it's part of the budget, but we can refer it. I'm just telling just a note that I had.
So can you give us some clarification, Mr. City Manager?
Yeah, so normally we submit this with the budget, but this year, because we anticipate that the COLA was going to be deferred, there was going to be no change in the pay plan until January. So we were going to submit it in advance of that to get it approved for January. Because the COLA didn't go through, we need to get that approved now. So that's why it's submitted and why we are requesting suspension of rules to get it approved tonight.
And Jody, can you give us some clarification if that doesn't happen, Jody?
I think if it doesn't happen, we're going to have to delay the COLA payment and do some kind of back payment because I don't think it can get approved in time for a July 1 implementation date. And we would have to then do some kind of catch-up payment in the paychecks. But it would be a little bit extra work for us administratively, but it is up to the council to decide.
So it's more administrative work, but we still have to pay it. So
yeah, and there is one change in a position to civil service on it too. So it's not just the pay scale. So yeah, I mean, we'd have to do some kind of adjustment in the subsequent payroll.
Alderman Pound had his hand up.
Thank you. Can I have somebody text that to me? Nothing's happening when I hit my iPhone there. I can't read the, I'll settle for the staff report actually.
Thank you. Alderman Finlayson had a hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we should be clear that this is not a wholesale classification. This is just positions that are being impacted by the 21 budget. Is that correct?
It is providing for the new pay tables that would go into effect on July 1 that would show the 3% COLA for all groups except for the police, which are getting a 1.5% COLA. These tables have been adjusted for those, and that is in the FY21 budget. And the position of that's being changed to a civil service position, we did include it in the budget at the civil service level, assuming this would be approved. But like I said, those are the two decisions that you have to go through. It's all in the 21 budget, so there's no fiscal impact overall. It's been in what you've already passed. But it's up to the council on how to proceed with approving the resolution.
I just didn't want us to be confused with the wholesale position classification legislation that we were dealing with some time ago. This just speaks to the negotiated agreements. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Tierney?
Yes, is it appropriate, Mr. City Attorney, to say who that is, that position? We Can I say that name?
It's this,
There's no there.
Special events.
You can say the position. You can say the position.
Okay, that's why I asked. Okay, thanks. I'm muting.
The position is fine, Jody. You can say that.
special events coordinator.
Oh, do we like the special events coordinator? Love her. Come on.
We shall remain nameless. No.
Okay. So, Alderman Payon.
Still haven't received a staff report from anybody.
Regina, while we're doing the staff report?
Alderman Payon, we're working on it. Takia's reaching out to Jacqueline, and we're going to get her to send it to you shortly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So can you, I mean, if this was to go to a finance committee, as Alderman Arnett think, I mean, what is it, what are we talking about? Mr. City Attorney?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, this simply codifies and makes regular what the council already voted on, because it's in two parts of the code. So you voted on these changes, and this just adjusts the grid in another part of the code where this is necessary. So if it goes back to finance, you can't change it without changing the whole budget. So you're probably not doing anything but making it cost more, because the delay would mean there's a float in the dollar. And so when you do finally catch up with the payment, you're probably paying more on the float. So it's probably going to cost the city more if it's delayed, in my humble opinion.
Thank you. And Regina?
Just FYI, Takia said the next meeting of the Finance Committee will be on July the 1st.
Okay. Alderman Arnett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we specifically talked about the schedule that was given to us in the budget binder. We noted that it hadn't been changed since actually the way it's titled, July 1st of 2019. And I felt uneasy about that at that time. And now we get this change, and also the changes to review in terms of the classification. I'd be more than happy to ask the members of the Finance Committee to have a quickly scheduled Finance Committee meeting, but this is really getting to be quite a habit to run these things in at the last minute and push them through. We knew we were going to not get the COLA weeks ago, so there was plenty of time to introduce this. I am not in favor of suspending the rules.
Alderman Finlayson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me ask Ms. Dickinson to clarify again. These are items that have already been negotiated. Is that correct? There's nothing new that we haven't already approved in this legislation.
Correct. Well, let me qualify that. On the pay scales, yes. The specific discussion about making a position that's currently exempt into a civil service position, that has not been specifically discussed, although it may have been in the discussion, the presentation that the mayor's office did to or the city manager did to Finance Committee. I don't recall specifics on that, but it's got little impact financially overall, but it's just making it an exempt employee that's here regularly and working regularly year after year into a civil service position.
And in a vital position, I might add. But that is the only difference. Everything else is what's already been previously negotiated.
Yes, and until the budget was passed last week, we couldn't introduce a pay scale that enacts the COLA until we knew for certain what was going through on the budget. And so this would have been the first meeting to introduce the new pay plan. And then unless we introduced it early, not knowing about the COLA decision. I don't know if that would have been okay from a schedule standpoint or not. Introducing
Maybe part of the confusion is calling it a new pay plan. Actually, this is what we approved in the multi-year negotiated agreements.
It is, and it is funded in the FY21 budget that you approved last Monday.
Yes. Okay. So nothing really new for us other than moving a position from contract to civil service.
I think it's exempt.
Or exempt. I'm sorry. I knew I was going to get that type wrong. I knew I was going to get
the right terminology, but
yes. Okay. And we have worked hard with the commitment to moving people from, I'm going to use the incorrect term again, contract positions to civil service. In this case, it's exempt to civil service. So this is fulfilling the commitments that we've been making all along. So again, it's nothing new that's being brought to us now.
I don't know if our HR director.
Hold on, Tony had her hand up first.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just to reiterate what my colleague Alderwoman Finlayson said, we up to the 11th hour, if you remember, we had an amendment. I think it was sponsored by Alderman Savage on still trying to to address COLA. So we really didn't know which way we were going to go until the budget was approved, and that this basically reconciles it with what we passed in the budget. And then as far as the civil service position, I thought we discussed it last year. I think we did, but I guess it just didn't happen in that fiscal year budget. But I know we discussed about this position as far as transferring over. So it does look like it's a wholesale change, but I asked some questions over the weekend, and this is something that's just a reconciliation of what we've already approved.
And I'll just get Trish to clarify, then go to Alderman Gay.
Thank you. I'm here. Yes, there was a lot of discussion from the council before. The desire was to move that position. There was a discussion about all positions in the mayor's office, and that this particular position was not really serving, the specific mayor. And so Alderwoman Finlayson, I think, pretty much led that discussion about having this particular position move out of the exempt service, move into the city manager's line of authority, and then be a civil service job. Now we have very specific requirements under the code that any position that goes into the civil service is required to be reviewed by the Civil Service Board. So we had to do that. We had to create a job description that was consistent with civil service job descriptions that needed to go before the Civil Service Board for approval. There was no recommendation to make any kind of grade distinction. There's no financial impact here. It's literally just moving from one type of service to another. And so the position summary itself does not list the exempt service positions. It's only a list of those that are in civil service. All of the exempt service titles are in that section of the code, which are required to be approved by the city council. So what comes before you is a listing of all titles that are covered by the civil service system in that position summary. So we do it annually, and typically do it with the budget. And so that process is to put it before you by resolution. We typically bring it by resolution to you, that summary, along with the pay scale. And as was stated before, that pay scale, you need to really know and understand what the council is going to finally vote upon in terms of the cost of living. And so we put it together. It's perfunctory in the sense that it also would be there and necessary for you to act upon, so that it's something that we can officially do administratively to implement for city employees that are affected by the pay scale. So we are waiting, honestly, administratively, to be able to move forward and implement what we see you have already voted upon in the budget, and would like to not have to go back and administratively, retroactively apply it, because that's a lot of staff time and burden. You've got to then go and deal with people's, adjust their overtime compensation, all their differentials, all of that. So it's not really as simple as being on the time frame associated with something already legally approved, such that we can just do across the board mass changes so that it can be implemented and people will see it in their paychecks and know that it's on time. That's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Tricia. Alderman Gay was next.
Thanks. My question, I guess she kind of just answered it. If we just vote to delay this and give Ross an opportunity to have it for the Finance Committee, the only consequence would be that we would just have to pay later. Is that all?
Yes, so for all 600 some odd employees, we will have to do a adjusted paycheck, the second full pay in July to enact this.
And what we would have to do, Alderman Gay, is
adjusted as in delayed?
Yeah, it would be delayed. Yes, at least one pay period. We got a lot going on in July, in relation to pay, and this would mean that all of our employees would have a special adjustment on their paycheck. Administratively, it's difficult, I'll say that.
Yeah, we have to go back and literally calculate how that change affects each individual instead of, being able to just do a mass change that's ahead of their, ahead of this, ready for this on time. That's my, yeah.
Alderman Arnett has his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's something wrong. In our budget binder, the schedule we had says pay scale effective July 1, 2019 and July 1, 2020. Why didn't the pay schedule get changed in the fiscal 2020 budget?
That is what City Manager Gerald was explaining at first. When we first prepared the mayor's proposed budget, we had assumed we were going to defer the COLA until January 1. Yes, we did. And so when we did the proposed budget, we had that COLA deferral in there. And as we went through the budget consideration process, it was decided that we wouldn't be able to do that and therefore would need the revised pay scale to move forward into July.
Listen to what I'm saying. The schedule we have in our budget binder is entitled Pay Scale Effective July 1st, 2019 and July 1st, 2020. It did not change apparently in 2020. You're talking about the change in 2021. I'm trying to figure out what it is we have in the budget binder.
July 20.
Alderman Arnett, the July 1st of 2019, that's FY20, right? That's the beginning of FY20. Fast forward a year later to the upcoming July 1st of 2020, that'll be for FY21. But we didn't anticipate that it was going to change until 6 months from now, until January 1st. So that's why it held fast at the FY20 level.
Okay, thank you. Now we're getting somewhere. So what would we have done? Would we have sometime in the beginning of this fiscal year have come out with a new proposed schedule that would have been effective January 1st, 2021?
Yes, that was our plan. That was our plan. So this fall, we would have introduced this so it would go into effect on January 1st of 2021.
All right. Now I understand. Thank you. I believe we're still discussing this on first reader.
On first reader, yeah. Did you have your hand up, Alderman Pern, or?
No, I don't have it up.
Okay, we're going to, with a show of hands, a motion to adopt R-37-20 on first reader. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Is there a motion to suspend the rules to allow the passage of the resolution at the meeting of its introduction?
Move to suspend rules.
Got a second, and it has to be 100%, right, Regina? Okay. We've had the discussion. With a show of hands, all those in favour say aye.
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 Looks like everybody. Is that right, Regina?
Yeah, they're moving around, but it looks like it.
Thank you, Alderman Annette. Is there a motion to adopt R-37-20 on second reader?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley?
Yes.
Alderman Rodriguez?
Aye.
Alderman Gay? Alderman Savage?
Aye.
Alderman Arnett?
Aye.
Alderwoman Tierney?
Aye.
Alderman Payon?
Aye.
Alderwoman Kendall Charles?
Aye.
And Alderwoman Finlayson?
Aye.
And that motion carries.
38-20, thank you. Sorry, it's the wrong one. Right, Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item is legislative action, second reader, beginning with 0520, city council meetings, order of business, for the purpose of modifying the order of business for regular and special meetings of the city council.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt O-5-20 on second reader?
So move.
Second. We have an amendment. Alderman Pendle Charles.
You do?
And Savage, Rob Savage.
Well, I'll let Alderman Savage take care of it.
Amendments 1 to 3, sorry.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, so again, the intention with this underlying ordinance is just to try to make our meetings more efficient and I believe meet the intention of how the code's written currently. So one of the meetings would be dedicated to all of the ceremonial, all the public hearings, and then the second council meeting would be dedicated to actually doing the business. Because the proposal, again, I thought it would be beneficial for us to jump right into some of the business instead of waiting until late at night. And when I know, at least for me, I'm not operating at 100% when it gets too late. So that's the intention. And with the amendments, these, I believe we developed, bring it up now, with the law office, just some further tweaks that ensure that we can maintain flexibility if we do need to change, if the mayor or the council need to change the actual agenda, we can change, we can adjust this at any time. So that's, and Mr. City Attorney, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's the origin of these amendments.
Mr. City Attorney?
Yeah, that's correct, Mr. Mayor. Basically what happens is in the code, when it talks about order of business, it uses the word agenda interchangeably, but they're not the same thing. The order of business is different from the agenda. And so we just cleared it up just to make it clear to the reader of the code that we're talking about in specific, the order of business separate from the agenda, which is, can be arranged by the council. And the code really reflects the order of business. And that's something we were trying to help with understanding. So yes, Alderman Savage is correct.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Alderman Tierney?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. City Attorney, I may misunderstand, but did you say, maybe it was an email to me, what effect this may or may not have in the agenda for our city council work sessions? Does it restrain us in any way to adopt an agenda for the city, for the work sessions?
No, and that's one of the things we wanted to clear up. The council has control over the agenda. The specific code section just referred to the order. So once you establish what the agenda is, this presents under the code an order for hearing those or dealing with those things. And it just really clears it up. But the agenda, the council has full control over.
Yeah, and Mr. Mayor, could you indulge me in just one more comment? What concerns me about this is that we haven't heard any, I don't believe we've heard much public input on this decision. And I'm just a little bit trepidatious because this is for the public, you know, and I just am concerned that we have not heard their perspective. I don't know if that surprises anyone else. So it's just a comment. Thank you.
Alderman Finlayson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Lyles, I'm trying to get clarification because for some reason I cannot open the amendments on my computer. Did you say the 3 amendments only spoke to the definition between order of business and agenda? Mr. Lyles.
I'll do it up myself. Yeah. Basically, what we did was we struck out the word agenda or added the word agenda when the code section really talks about order of business. The intent of the bill, at least, was to deal with the order rather than the agenda, which is set by the council. Okay, so all 3 amendments speak to the same? Yes. Just remove the order of business and replace it with the word agenda. Okay, so in 3 different locations throughout the legislation? Correct. Okay, thank you.
Alderman Gay.
Yes, so if the public hearing is moved to the special city council meeting and we decide that the public hearing needs to be postponed or that we need to hear more, would that mean, again, that the next available time for public hearing would be a month away at the next special city council meeting?
Well, if you're asking me, there is a bill on the public hearing, which should be coming before you probably in the next sometime soon. We're trying to correct all of those kinds of things, but right now the public hearing would stay as it is now. No changes to that.
This says that it would be moved
to the first meeting.
Well, yeah, I mean, basically what it's saying is that it's just taking the public hearing out of the one meeting so that you have them all in one particular meeting instead of crossing it into the regular meeting and the special meeting.
Yes, but I'm asking that if it's only in the special city council meetings and we decide that additional action or further action needs to be taking place, would that then postpone it to be a month away to the next special council meeting? Or would the public hearing continue at the first city council meeting in the month?
It will continue the next 30 days, the next special meeting.
So what does that do to, I mean, that slows down legislation, wouldn't it? If we're down extending the period in between to 30 days?
I can get Alderman Savage to sort of walk it through.
Yeah, so typically, yeah, if a public hearing does get, for example, if it stays open, it would go 30 days to the next, but this still gives us the flexibility if we needed to modify the agenda to add additional public hearing. But, you know, it's kind of, think back to the short-term rental public testimony, which we had repeatedly at every meeting. It took up, you know, probably at least an hour at a number of meetings. This would at least concentrate that at one meeting. And I think we would also need to make sure we are adhering to, and I don't know if this needs to get added to the code, but allowing people only one bite at the apple, like one opportunity to testify. That's, I know how they do it in other jurisdictions. And so they want to be able to come back at every single meeting to keep hitting on the same legislation, but they could submit as much written as they wanted. Does that answer your question?
I guess so. Yeah, it does. I'm still concerned about how then would this affect, you know, the legislative process, because we've talked a number of times about figuring out ways to add more to our agendas at times so that we can discuss more and have it, you know, ready for final draft at a quicker time. So how would that combat that? I'm sorry, combat that, you know, our attempts to add more discussion so that we can, you know, increase the time efficiency of some of our legislation.
Alderman Savage?
Well, I mean, that's a good question in terms of how it's going to impact the time of the legislation in terms of how quickly it goes through the process. It's certainly not my intention to slow down the process, but it is to kind of make it more efficient. And so when we get to the discussion after the public hearing, that we can have you know, a discussion again at a reasonable time in the night and have a much more efficient conversation. Yeah, sir, if there are other ways you think we can improve this to make sure we keep the time down, but I think we'll just have to be careful with when we extend public comment period. And I don't know if we can extend it just for written testimony. I'm not sure.
And
if anybody else has.
Yeah, I just one last question. And so would the first city council meeting, it would almost, the time frame would resemble what we have now through our Zoom meetings, where we come in, go through the approval agenda, consent calendar, legislative actions, and then we're out by like 10 o'clock.
Yeah, depending on what's on the agenda, yeah, we would be more focused on either just listening to the public comments, and hopefully if this passes, we can also, as the mayor said, update our public comments to allow for, even during virtual meetings, so they can speak to these, the legislation. But it would, yeah, that's kind of the hope is we would be able to, at both of our meetings, get out at a reasonable time by doing things more efficiently.
Could we just get a little clarification on the legislation before the third, if possible, the third reading? I'm sorry, on the legislative process, how that would affect the time frame?
Alderman Pino-Charles, do you want to give that clarification?
I was on another track. Let's hold that for a minute. Two things, Alderman Gay. Number one, this does not preclude anyone from submitting testimony at any time, just like we're doing right now. And not to say that we can't improve upon our virtual reception of testimony as well. So that's not stopping the public or precluding the public from presenting testimony in between time. The second thing is, I think, and I'm not even speaking for myself, because you know I can go all night long. But the thing of it is, I think it provides us with more focus. I think we're much more focused if we know that we have one meeting set aside, that we're going to be listening to public testimony, and it's going to be that particular meeting where it's going to be heard, I think, and I think it flows even better than that. Now, even beyond that, if we find out that it's not really working, that we're really having issues, nothing's to say that we can't tweak it later on and make some adjustments. So it's not like I don't see it as being etched in stone. This is something that we can take a look at. We're not precluding anyone from providing testimony. I think it focuses us more, even probably more focused within the public as well, as to exactly listening and receiving the testimony that we receive from City Hall.
Alderman Finlayson had a hand up next. Are there any other hands? Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Initially, I was supporting this legislation, and now I have second thoughts. And what is concerning me is the timeline. More and more frequently, we are leaving public hearings open. And so now, if this legislation is approved, we have a public hearing today, and it is open until the second meeting in July. And so my question is, what does that do? And I think this is the question Alderman Gay was getting to. What does that do to our timeline of expeditiously dispatching with legislation? And I guess maybe if Ms. Green is in the room, or available, because she's the one that tries to schedule these for us in a timely fashion, or Ms. Eldridge, either one. What does this do to our timeline? Does this prolong our legislation? Because again, as I started out with, we are more and more delaying the closing of our public hearings. So what does this do to getting legislation through in a fast fashion?
Regina?
I don't think I'm the person to answer this. I think you should be Mr. Lyles. Mike, please.
Okay, Mr. Lyles.
Well, you know, being on the council requires the council to understand the full weight of its responsibility. The code is the code, but the council has all the power and authority to throw all that out the window and lose the weight of the particular provision before you because it's the hearings are delayed or the public hearings continue to go on seemingly for month after month. If you choose to ignore anything that's in the code, you can do that. You have the right to do that. But I think what is the intent behind this is to put some discipline on yourself to hear everything that needs to be heard and then dispose of that matter into the next item, the next action, which is a vote. And so that's why I think the intent is behind this, and that's how we tried to craft the language. But the council has the full authority and responsibility to not do anything if you don't want to. But we would hope through the crafting of this legislation that you take the advantage that the code is giving you, hear everything that has to be heard, and then move to the action stage of the particular code section or resolution.
Okay, so let me ask then. The legislation is heard, it's a public hearing tonight. Can we opt in this legislation to have the public hearing continue at the next meeting? And I know you've just said we can do anything we want to do.
It does not allow for that. And I would think that you would probably need some other kind of council action or vote in order to do that. What we've been doing over the last several months is someone says, let's move it to the next meeting, and it just gets moved. And I think the council would have to seriously consider it under a motion, a second, have some discussion about what the need to move it would be, because you would be kind of going against what the code is laying out for you.
So that's my area of discomfort right now, because we're going to delay it a month if we keep our public hearings open. So I don't know. Thank
Alderman
you.
Annette had his hand up next, then Alderman Pendell Charles, I think. So put your hands up if there's other people.
So I think with the amendment, we always have the ability to move this to the legislative agenda, the first one of the month, by making that motion. But it's always bothered me that we hear public testimony and in the same meeting with seemingly no time to really reflect on it, we go ahead and take legislative action. It almost seems discourteous to me. If people are giving public testimony, we ought to have some time to take it to heart, conceivably even take it back to committee and discuss the things that we've heard in public testimony. I would also point out that this legislation really returns things to the way they were these many years ago, Sheila, when you and I first got on the council. And it was always the second meeting that was devoted to public hearing and things like honorary, giving out citations and awards and those sorts of things. And I do think I subscribe to this notion that getting to legislative action at 10 or 11 o'clock in the evening is really not very productive. And I agree with Rhonda, Alderwoman Pendell Charles, that we can try go back to the way it used to be. If it doesn't work, or if we hear from our constituents, who are the ones we really ought to be listening to, we can go back and change it again, maybe return it officially to the way it's working now.
Alderman Pendell Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm thinking back, other than the short-term rental, which we did continue the public hearing for many months, which was well worth it, and we should have done that. From my memory, most of the time, and I'm looking at Alderman Arnett, most of the public hearings that we that we postponed are coming out of Ward 8. Now, with that being said, normally when they do come out of Ward 8, Alderman Arnett is asking for a month's worth of postponement. So to me, I would venture to say, and Ms. Watkins Eldridge can correct me, probably 90% of what we postpone is out of Ward 8, and normally it's at least for a month, either through the Planning Commission or Maritime, or there's something that's going to require more than 2 weeks of a postponement. So I think this probably fits neatly into what we need to do. But tell me if my memory is correct. Other than short-term rental, and we did need to do that for many, many months. That was well worth it. But other than that, I think it's mainly coming out of Ward 8 from what I can see, and it normally requires a month. So
I hereby resign from the council, and we'll get rid of that problem.
Alderman Savage has his hand up.
Yeah, just to reiterate, I do what others are saying, that we will still have flexibility to change this. It sounds like it would need a motion, but I think that, and believe me, I know I've been a thorn in the side of the law office, not just this one, but with trying to push through legislation. So I'm very sensitive to that, and I think we could still do that, but we would need a good reason and support. But I think, like we have typically done in the past with this, is extend aldermanic courtesy. If one of us does feel like the public hearing needs to be extended, I think we're likely to grant that, especially if there is some legitimate urgency behind it.
Okay, so we need a motion, right, Regina, to amend O-5-20. Do we have that motion yet?
Yeah, well, we already had, Alderman Savage moved it and it has a second. So
okay,
we're moving the amendment.
Okay. All right. All those in favor with a show of hands say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Okay. Is there a motion to vote on whether the amendment of O-5-20 is substantive? Okay. Is there a motion to adopt O-5-20 as amended on second reader?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor with a show of hands say aye.
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 All those opposed say no. I'm a little bit indifferent. Is there a motion to adopt O-5-20 on third reader?
So move.
Second.
Okay, Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley?
Aye.
Alderman Rodriguez?
Aye.
Alderman Gay?
No.
Alderman Savage?
Sorry. Aye.
Alderman Arnett?
Aye.
Alderwoman Tierney?
No.
Alderman Payon?
Aye.
Alderman Pendell Charles?
Aye.
Alderman Finlayson?
Reluctantly, aye.
Okay, that motion carries.
Have it. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, legislative action, sir. Second reader, beginning with O-1119, R2NC district demolitions. For the purpose of requiring structural analysis prior to demolition of a residential structure or building in the R2NC zone, or single-family residential neighborhood conservation district, requiring execution of a contract between the city and the structural engineer prior to demolition, and generally relating to the demolition of a residential structure or building in that district.
Is there a motion to adopt O-11-19 on second reader?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Alderman Arnett.
Yes, this, Mr. Mayor and colleagues, is back to a relatively simple amendment. It is to have the planning staff select the structural engineer to do an inspection of a house to determine its structural integrity. This is one of those often delayed amendments or pieces of legislation for a number of reasons. The Planning Commission had asked for some amendments to do some things in addition to this, and there was a lot of back and forth sorting that out. I think we're back just to the simple, straightforward ordinance. We may get back to the things the Planning Commission was asking about, like legislation regarding demolition by neglect, similar to what is in the historic district. But this doesn't get into those complications. We're trying to clear the decks from some of this backlogged legislation.
Alderman Tierney.
So So did the Planning Commission leave off at that last report was where they left off with this legislation? Did they ever look at it again after that?
They recommended favorably on the legislation as submitted, but with additional suggestions. One of them was that we put into the code more generically demolition by neglect. That is on a to-do list for me, but I don't want to hold this legislation up any longer. The other thing they put in there, which was an interesting thing, which is something may be determined to be, most of our buildings are not up to current code, and a lot of our buildings have some structural problems, but they wanted more of a judgment factor about whether, even if it had structural problems, should it be saved. Now, quite frankly, I think the planning and zoning staff are doing a good job. They look at buildings in terms of their contributing nature to the community, and I think the staff pursue that. If it's a contributing building, even if it has some significant structural problems, they try to work with the applicant and get them to address the problems rather than demolish the building. So I'm actually pretty comfortable with the way the planning staff have been handling this. We've got a very live case right now at 613 Chester Avenue, a demolition, where the planning staff are saying, no, that's really a contributing building. I would have demolished it myself, but I'm not on the planning commission or planning staff.
So may I ask, what is it in your current code that doesn't address this? Because that is, you are in a conservation district, right? I mean, my concern is that the engineer may say that one of these buildings is dangerous when it really isn't. So
they do. I mean, what was happening, what is alleged to have happened, I actually have no firsthand evidence of this, is that people would shop structural engineers till they found one who would say it was structurally unsound. This is the same thing as what we do with traffic impact analysis, where there's a set of structural engineers that the planning staff have a list. When someone comes in with a project and it needs a traffic study, they assign a traffic study company to do that study. The applicant pays for the study. This would be the similar sort of thing. If there's a request to demolish, they would assign to a list of structural engineers, relatively few, they're well known, and that would be done randomly by the staff, and end of story.
Okay. So a motion and a second on second reader. All those in favour, with a show of hands, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no.
Sorry. I'm a no person tonight. Sorry.
Is there a motion to adopt O-11-19 on third reader?
So move.
Second.
Second.
Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley?
Yes.
Alderman Rodriguez?
Aye.
Alderman Gay?
Aye.
Alderman Savage?
Aye.
Alderman Arnett?
Aye.
Alderwoman Tierney?
No.
Alderman Payon?
Aye.
Alderwoman Pendle Charles?
Aye.
And Alderwoman Finlayson?
Aye.
And the motion carries.
Hey, Mr. City Attorney, please present the next on the agenda.
Sure thing. The next item on the agenda is O-19-19, adequate public facilities. There is an amendment to this by Alderman Arnett, and given that amendment we just got, it is likely that this needs to be, under the code, this needs to be referred out. So do not think that this O-19-19 is ready for prime time with the amendment. Amendment has to go first.
Okay, so let's get a motion to get it on the floor. Do we get that on the floor? Sorry.
So move.
Oh, hold on a second. This piece of legislation is currently on the agenda as a second reader. You have to adopt it on second reader, get a second for discussion, and then adopt the amendment.
Yeah, sure. So, got a second. Someone did a first, second from Alderwoman Finlayson. Let's have some discussion. Alderman Arnett has his hand up first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is another one of those long postponed, much traveled pieces of legislation that I hope we can wrap up. It was initially written under a different regime in the Office of Law. Teresa Sutherland and I worked very closely on this. She pointed out several deficiencies from what was put on first reader, and I agreed with her wholeheartedly. The amendment is to essentially rewrite the ordinance so that it is structured in the same way as the rest, of the adequate public facility legislation, and so I want to substitute the Teresa Sutherland version for the original first reader, and on, I guess, on second. But then once that happens, I think I understand what the city attorney said. This has never been to and has to go to the Planning Commission. So once we substitute, if you all agree to that, the new version, it would then go back into the hopper as though it were a first reader, go to the Planning Commission, get its hearing there, public hearing, come back to the council, have a public hearing, and then go to the Rules Committee. So that's the intent. So you have in your Granicus the substitute amendment. This went before the Rules Committee recently. The committee agreed that there was no action on their part, that we needed to go through this process that we're engaged in right now.
Alderman Pendle Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On page 3, line 27, the word proposed is spelled incorrectly.
Okay. I'm trying to find the legislation. Rhonda, are you talking about the substitute amendment?
I'm talking about the red line portion on page 3, line 27.
So I talked with Jacqueline about that today. This is the version that Teresa gave to me. It was, I believe, her last official act as city manager. She gave it to me the evening of her last day. I kept it in red line. There were blue strikeouts. I took her strikeouts. So Jacqueline suggested that when we send this to the Planning Commission, we do, since this is new legislation, this is an amendment to existing legislation, that we just give the Planning Commission a cleaned up version. No colors, no reds, no blues, no anything else. Just go all in capital letters as new legislation. So we'll get that type up. I think there's some other embedded code that I had a devil of a time trying to work with. So I really look forward to help from Jacqueline to get that all unscrambled if we agree to substitute tonight.
Thank you, Alderman Arnett. That makes sense.
Alderman Savage had his hand up.
Yeah, I'm just not entirely clear on the process because it's not in amendment form. So it's what are we gonna? Are we just voting on a substitution? You were saying swapping out what's currently there for this on first reader.
So it is an amendment form. It's the Arnett Amendment, which is the substitution. So it's both an amendment and a substitution, swapping out the earlier version and substituting this newer version with the improved legislative construct to it. And it also changes. It initially was traffic impact. Now it's automotive transportation facilities. So it even had a name change.
Okay. Okay. So, okay, I see. Thank you.
Mr. City Attorney?
Yeah, one of the things that we were trying to work out, I mean, it just might even be cleaner if the council wanted to submit the substituted 01919 and then have it go forward. I don't know that this is actually an amendment as much as it is, it's a whole new bill, really. And so maybe we need to craft a way to get it to committee and back to you appropriately.
What committee?
Well, it's got to go to planning because it affects zoning.
Right.
So it's got to go there before you can even deal with it, really.
Right.
Which is why we're kind of confused about what needs to happen now, given that you've got such a wholesale change and it's on second reader.
Well, second reader wasn't my preference. That was your direction. I wanted it to be substituted on first reader, but I'll do it whatever way. I do not want the bill as it was crafted. As I said, Teresa and I actually spent a considerable amount of time working on this, working through the legislation. Her question to me is, what do you actually want this to say? And so we actually sat at her table in the office and worked it through, and this is the revised, and she's correct. The first reader as submitted did not follow the structure of all of the other APF legislation that has reason, the exceptions, purpose exceptions, process, and so forth. It was in an entirely new format. So however we get this new one to the Planning Commission, I'm indifferent. I just would like to get it off to the Planning Commission.
So here's what I think could happen. A motion to substitute the red line 01919 for the one that's in second reader. Do that first, and then another vote by the council to have it go to the Planning Commission.
All right, so I make that motion.
Let's get Regina wanted a little clarification, I think.
Okay, listen, I think your goal is, when I spoke to you, you didn't want to change the legislation's number. You wanted to stay 01919, but you didn't like the version that we currently have on the record. So at this point, this legislation on first reader, the first version had a first reader and a public hearing. And it was postponed till this agenda tonight. Yeah, as a
public hearing. It did not have a public hearing because it has to go to the Planning Commission.
Your new red line bill did not have a public hearing.
No.
Right, and I agree. The bill that was introduced, the first reader, did have a public hearing. At this point, your red line version, you are amending the bill with tonight because it is on second reader. So therefore, if this amendment passes, your new red line version will be the bill, and it has substantive amendments in it. So therefore, it will have a public hearing, and you can refer it to the Planning Commission. And then it will come back to the City Council for its final vote once we get our feedback from the Planning Commission.
Exactly.
The version that you want, the red line.
That is not according to Title II. And in fact, we have legislation, and I want to thank the Office of the Law for that. It's very clear under Title II 04090 that when something is changed to Title 21, it's introduced to the first reader, does not get a public hearing, and it goes directly to the Planning Commission. So it never should have had a public hearing.
Regina?
Just for clarification purposes, Alderman Arnett, your 01919 had a public hearing when? In October the 28th. I am not speaking to your red line amended version. I am speaking to 019, the original bill, had a public hearing.
Before going to the Planning Commission, because this has not been to the Planning Commission.
It has gone to the Planning Commission.
I don't understand. Look, I don't understand what the point of that is. It should not have had a public hearing according to the code. Okay. We've had a discussion of it. We actually have legislation on first reader to correct that. There was a conflict between Title II 04090 and 180, and 090 should have preference, and it should not have had a public hearing. But so what if it did? It's still, we're substituting, we want to substitute this and get it to the Planning Commission.
And we can get that done.
Let's get it done now.
Yeah, let's get it done now. I agree.
So there's a motion to substitute or amend 019. Can I get a motion on that, Alderman Arnett?
I did.
Okay, for the amendment. And we have a second.
Second.
Okay, thank you.
All in favor.
With a show of hands, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. Is there a motion to vote on whether this amendment of 01919 is substantive? I need a motion.
It is.
It is. Thank you. That's a motion. Thank you.
Can I say something? If you agree that this motion is substantive and you want it to go to the Planning Commission, you can make the motion to refer this to the Planning Commission, and it'll come back to the City Council once we get the findings from the Planning Commission, and we'll have a hearing.
That's what we want.
Trying to get to. Awesome. Thank you. Do you need
a second and an all in favor, please?
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. I thought we did that. Let's say aye again. Thank you.
Aye. Again.
Do you need a roll call or anything, Regina?
We are done.
So.
We are done with 019, the red line version.
Now.
Well, now.
Yeah, I'll be back.
It'll get referred to planning automatically.
Yep.
That's where it's going.
Yes.
Good.
All right.
Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Now I'm lost. No, let me see. Okay, so.
Primary election.
It's
No, we
items from the
finished. We're
consent
going
calendar.
back to the items that were pulled off the consent calendar. First reader, CA 220,
Okay, yep.
change of primary date.
Is there a motion to adopt CA-220 on first reader?
So move.
And a second from Alderman Savage there, Regina.
Okay, thank you.
Can we have some discussion?
Yep,
briefly,
that's
though?
what we're here for. Yep, Alderman.
Why do we need the charter amendment? Because we have a resolution to do the election dates. I'm not clear what the charter amendment is for.
Mr. Lyles?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, a charter amendment is required because the charter establishes your primary and general election dates currently. And in order to change the date from September to July needs a charter change.
Well,
The second piece of legislation related to the election that is on the consent calendar was presented to you at your work session last week, and that came from the Board of Supervisors of Elections prior to this charter amendment being received today.
It's two different things going on.
So again, I'm a little confused. The charter certainly doesn't say September whatever of 2021 and November whatever of 2021. So what is it that the charter says? I don't have the charter amendment because we just got it, so I don't have it in front of me. What is the charter amendment saying?
Can I jump in?
Sure.
Yeah, the charter does say September. It says, I'd have to look it up, but I just looked it up earlier when I was working with law office to put this together. And so the charter amendment simply removes September, puts in July, and makes it the second Tuesday in July.
The charter amendment, I think, brings with it a problem because it will have to be first reader, second reader, public hearing, and then it can't go into effect for 54 days. Yeah. So do we have a time crisis here?
Yes. So, and the law office briefed me on this earlier, and that's so. Yes, the next public hearing would be. It has to wait that 21 days. So it would be July 27th, I think it is, for the public hearing. The Board of Elections needs to inform the state of any of our election calendar by early August. I don't know the exact date off the top of my head. So if this is something that the council wants to pursue, we would have to suspend the rules on the 27th at the public hearing to vote on second reader. And in my mind, it's important enough. I've been trying to get this. I've had this idea for a while, but it just kind of got pushed to do it with the legislation that the election board had proposed. But the thinking is that it would increase the length of time, so we'd have about 4 to 5 months in between the primary election and the general, and that would give us more time as candidates, any candidate, to reach out to the unaffiliated voters and those who aren't part of the actual political party, because during the primary we have to focus on the political party.
I agree with the purpose, but I don't think the timing works. We don't meet in August, so earliest we could do that would be in September. Have to wait 54 days. Long time since you said that the Board of Elections has to make their announcement in August. We're already too late.
Well, that's why I said it would have to go to public hearing on the 27th of July, and then we would have to suspend the rules to have second, third reader all on the 27th to make this happen. And then it would still have that delay in actually taking effect. But I would think that if we pass this on the 27th, that would hopefully be enough for the election board to go ahead and move forward and say, this is what they've decided.
Jumping up and down.
Let's get some. I'm sure that Regina's done her homework to make sure that we can make those timelines. We would never put something forward if it wasn't possible.
So it has to go to the Rules Committee, so you couldn't send it to, it's a charter amendment, it has to go to Rules after the public hearing.
But can that rule be suspended or?
That's a Mr. Lyle's question, but it is the charter, it's not a regular resolution or ordinance.
I don't think you can, there's nothing in the code that allows you to suspend for charter amendments like you can for ordinances or resolutions.
But we can still make the timelines if it goes to those committees, right, Regina, or not? No?
Well, I guess this gives us the time at least to figure that out. If this is something we can do, if we get this approved on first reader, we can take a closer look.
Okay, well, let's get it on there. Any other questions? I don't see any other hands. Alderman Tierney, then Alderman Finlayson.
Yeah, this is to Alderman Savage. Could you be more clear on your reason for this? I'm not clear on the genesis of this. Is it a time?
Sure. Well, so in terms of the urgency, that's just it just came up at this time because the election board had proposed their changes. But again, for me, this became apparent campaigning because I had a primary opponent, and so. When any candidates have a primary opponent in the primary election, you have to focus on winning your party's primary. You have to focus on those for our case, focus on the Democrats to get elected. And so after the primary in September, you only have a month and a half to reach out to all those other voters, the Republicans, the unaffiliated, in that short period of time once you actually win. And you only have a month and a half to raise a lot of money again, because if you have a primary opponent, you spend all your money in the primary, then you have to raise a lot of money to run against in the general election. So that's a short time frame. So I've kind of have two interests. The one interest is just again increasing turnout, allowing candidates to really reach out to the unaffiliated voters and even those people who don't typically vote. And the second thing is just to help reduce some of the stress that such a short timeline provides or causes to the candidates themselves.
Yeah. I know that the city attorney is not going to like me for saying this, but I just think it's a very critical election year, and I'm just hesitant to make any changes.
Mr. City Attorney.
We are helping Alderman Savage with the language. We have no political side with any legislation.
Yeah.
You can do as you please.
I heard you were running for alderman.
I had to move from Bowie first.
Alderman Finlayson was next, then Alderman Gay. I think that's what I saw hands up.
Yes, thank you. I guess I'm concerned about the timeline. So may I ask Regina, I guess you're the elections clerk also, and we heard from the Mrs. Leahy last week or 2 weeks ago. Could you weigh in on what has happened thus far to already move us into a good position as far as the election is concerned?
We already completed the draft election calendar. We have one, basically, if we're going to be using the devices in a polling precinct, and then we have an election calendar if we have to do an election by mail. And we've completed the draft MOU to go to Anne Arundel County because Joe Torrey reached out to us and asked us if we could start getting that information together to get it over to him as soon as possible. He wanted to start meeting in the summer. So as of right now, the board met last Thursday, and they are in the process of working on the resolutions that they presented to you at the work session, and we're going forward. So there are a lot of pieces that are moving already.
Okay, and Mr. Torrey is with the state or with the county?
He is the director of Anne Arundel County Board of Elections.
Okay. I guess that's a big concern that I have. I am not so much concerned about our fundraising. I just think that we have changed our election dates on several occasions for the county, for the state, and to change it again for the city, I just find it difficult to accept. So I don't think that's a good idea. Done.
Alderman Gay was next.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I
I
couldn't understand if this was in Granicus or through email, but I've been following the conversation. If you could just clarify the dates that you're trying to move it to for me, Alderman Savage.
Yeah, it would move it to the second Tuesday in July, which makes it a little more consistent because I think we're the only
last week in June, is it now currently?
The primary elections currently.
Oh no, the primaries.
First, or it's in the mid September.
So you want to move the primary from September to June,
right?
Then we campaign from, or whomever is running with them, from June to November.
Well, for the primary election, you campaign, start in the spring and go on until July, and and then from July to November, you'd be campaigning for the general election. I mean, that is how it's most, at least in my experience, jurisdictions don't typically have this kind of short general election period like we do. Even in the county, it's when we have the county elections are with federal elections, but those primaries are this year it got moved to June, but it's typically scheduled in May for the primary. We are a bit unusual with our abbreviated.
How would that align us? Would we be with state elections? How would this move? Or
no, it wouldn't move our election. It would just, it wouldn't align it with any other year or any other jurisdiction. It would just make the dates consistent, more consistent.
And so how do we, July is a weird time to attempt to increase voter turnout with a large majority of the population being away on vacation or doing whatever they're doing in the summer months. How do we make up for that in a campaign?
Well, it depends on who your audience is. That's the thing. I think if we want to increase turnout in general of all voters, then we want a longer period of time to reach out to people besides those folks in our party alone. And I think that's where distancing this out would give us more time to reach out to everybody, even people who don't typically vote. And so that's my intention with this. But certainly can discuss this even more, and maybe we can even look into having an early committee meeting on this.
Could we possibly, because I like the idea of what you're getting at. I'm just worried about some of the last minute things. And I'm unable to find this for some reason in American, so I can't really follow the exact thing that you have. So.
Duane, it was sent to us by email today. You got it? You have an email from Takia with it as an attachment. So I want to withdraw my second because I thought you were changing it to July of this year and September of this year.
Just for Ward 8.
Mr. City Attorney, I don't see how this can possibly work. If I was hoping we could change the resolution to change the date from September to July in the resolution, but you're saying that would be inconsistent. So I don't see how the timing can possibly work for this, given the things that are already being done by the elections board and commitments we have to make, calendars we have to write. I like the notion. I think that giving more time between the primary and the general for both campaigning and fundraising once you know you're going to go on to the general election. But I just wonder if this can, I'll still vote for it on first reader, but I just don't see how it can work.
So shall we, we can vote on it and we can find out, so we can go get it on the floor and then do the work. Yep. So all those in favor, with a show of hands, say aye. And opposed, say no. Okay. So we have to refer CA 220 to Rules of City Government and the Board of Supervisors of Elections. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, sir, that's R3420, CDBG, removed from the consent calendar.
What about 02520?
We'll just do them one at a time, shall we?
Just taking them in order as we got them.
02520 is before, whatever. So, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, hang on a minute. Let me just get to it. Okay, cool. So R3420, do we need to move it? Regina?
It needs to be adopted on first reader.
Okay. Can I get a motion to adopt that on first reader, please?
So move.
Can I get a second?
Come on.
Second.
And Alderman Arnett, discussion?
Yes, so I'm trying to frantically get back to this. This is a resolution. It is not assigned to a committee, but when I printed out the report and read it, I was kind of startled by some of the things that I saw in here, including stricken encouragement of non-English speaking persons and persons with disability is struck. Public hearing is struck. There seems to me to be some things here that we really need to dig into a little bit. It's several pages long, and I was kind of surprised at some of the things. Now, they may be being struck and entered someplace else, but significant changes in this document. So I wanted to get it assigned to a committee, either rules or whatever. Maybe it's Human and Welfare Committee, whichever, but quite a few changes.
And it's going to be referred to a public hearing. Is that right, Regina?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But no committee. So I think it needs to go to some committee, either rules or health and human welfare, or I think rules is appropriate because this is under Title 21, under planning and zoning, but wherever, I just was surprised at some of the changes.
Okay, we'll refer it to rules then. Alderman Rodriguez had his hand up.
Sorry, I was just going to say that for me, it seemed more appropriate for Housing and Human Welfare because CDBG is reviewed under the subcommittee currently of Housing and Human Welfare. That's all.
So, Mark, did you see some of these strikeouts?
Did
you see the strikeout for non-English speaking and persons with disabilities? And no public hearing?
Let's refer it to both, can we?
I agree. It needs to be reviewed by committee. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, both. If that's okay with Sheila.
Yes.
Alderman Gay has his hand up.
Yeah, I think to Teresa's point, if we're talking about the right one, there were these is this for the 2020 amendments to Citizens Participation Plan?
Yes.
Yeah, I think these were recommendations that were actually passed down for her, passed down to her. So I just absolutely clarify that with her. And I believe it also was time sensitive in order for us to send out the CDBG grants. So is there a way that we can check with that before this is?
It's just on first reader now.
I could have sworn it was time sensitive, but I may be mistaken. I may be thinking of something else.
I think Sally's on in the meeting. She can probably address that.
Sally?
She's hiding. There you are.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was muted. I'm sorry. What was the question?
Alderman Gay?
Well, I was just asking about the amendments to the Citizens Participation Plan and them being passed down, I believe, to Teresa or recommended. And is it time sensitive?
Yes, it is a bit time sensitive. We'll have more information about where the money is going in July, but we do need to be able to get this to HUD on their timetable, which is pretty quick turnaround.
And I believe in the last council meeting, last committee meeting that we had, she did say that she'd been waiting for a final date from HUD, but they had not gotten back to her. And I assume they've done so by now, and that it is pretty. So you wouldn't recommend that we move this tonight? Or are you fine with it being in the next meeting in July?
The next meeting is okay, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Arnett?
Thing where items are struck in one place and substituted, but when I was reading it earlier today on page 3, there's a strikeout of encouragement of non-English speaking persons and persons with disability. And then on page 5, it strikes out public hearing. And then there's a lot of things in here that are highlighted in yellow, and it wasn't clear what highlighting in yellow actually means. So I was kind of alarmed with what seemed like pretty substantive changes, and changes that I wouldn't really feel comfortable with in terms of not encouraging non-English speaking and people with disabilities, and in terms of not having public hearing process. So is this something that we're being given, we don't have a choice, or are these things that I just felt it needed a little more discussion by the council, because as a resolution, it was going to have a public hearing and a vote with no committee review. And I really had some questions about what's in here.
Alderman Gay can probably speak to that more, but I will say that, Alderman Arnett, this is just for the additional COVID money that we've received from HUD. So in order to be able to spend that money, we had to make amendments to these previous documents that had gone through the normal process. But Teresa Wellman did discuss the COVID money changes with the Housing Committee. So I don't know, Alderman Gay, if you want to say anything about that.
Gay?
Yeah, sorry. I'm just looking back through our emails and our communications about this. And I'm not sure, based off of what you just mentioned, yellow highlights, I'm not sure why that was mentioned. We didn't discuss that. It was up, though, I should add, for public comment for some time, I believe a month as required. I'm sorry, it was shortened from a month due to the COVID pandemic, but it was up for 3 or 2 weeks as required by HUD. And it just came down a week ago before our last meeting. But I mean, I'm sure Teresa would be happy to provide the details on that for you.
And that is why there are those other changes, is because HUD made some exemptions to the normal process because of the quick turnaround, and because we can't do business as usual in terms of getting public comment, having public hearings, things like that. So HUD made a few exceptions just for this limited amount of money to address COVID needs.
But the title of this doesn't say that it deals only with COVID. The title is Citizen Participation Plan Community Development Block Grant Program. And it is an amended version. So this doesn't say the amendments go away when COVID money goes away, unless they're thinking COVID is going to be with us forevermore.
Right. Well, if you see the staff report, it explains why we had to amend what was previously approved.
And could I just support Sally's comments really quick with an email I just found from Teresa. And this was on May the 6th, just stating that we needed to update our citizens participation plan based on new regulations due to COVID in response to COVID-19 pandemic. and in accordance with the flexibility provided under the CARES Act, the City of Annapolis amending its citizens participation plan to promote and support the social distancing while continuing to offer the public an opportunity to provide valuable citizen input and insight into the policies and procedures of its CDBG grant program. And I can forward this to you. It has the amended plan is able for review at. This is all the stuff that we've kind of discussed over the course of the last month.
So I have the amended plan, and I also have the staff report, but I don't see anything that says that these amendments are temporary. It looks to me like it's an amendment of the citizen participation period, which
to the process that we followed this time. Every 5 years we do a new plan, and the analysis of impediments is done even more often than that. So this is just amending to explain how the process worked for this particular time.
So Dewan and Mark and Ellie, this was your committee discussion. Are you comfortable with these changes? Ellie?
Yeah, my colleague Alderman Gay did a great idea, great explanation. It's very clear specifically what this resolution does in response to the CARE Act, and I believe that it is timely. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 changes that is specifically listed in the staff report. I can see where it looks like it's a blanket, issuance of the plan, but we have been briefed on it. We had a public hearing. We went through all of that on the plan, but these 5 changes had to be itemized in response to the CARE Act. And you can read that, it's kind of administrative stuff, virtual or web-based hearings, clarifying what a disaster is, and then and what details should happen, and then any waivers that might come into play, and reducing the comment period. So I think we've been briefed, and I think we support it.
So the reason we have committees is so you guys can do a deep dive. If you're comfortable, I would certainly support this.
Okay, we have a first and a second, and it's on first reader. With a show of hands, all those in support say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Okay, Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item.
Yes. Now, O2520, conveyance to Newtown 20. Removed from consent calendar.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
The reason I asked this to be removed, if I could ever get back to it, O2520, is I noticed that it wasn't referred to a committee. Ordinances usually are referred to a committee. I would think, again, this could come to rules. It seems to me the rationale for doing this is pretty straightforward. The city manager gave us a good write-up, but it is intended to go to a committee, is it not?
So it's supposed to go to Housing and Human Welfare. It's on first reader. So
on the legislation as shown on Granicus, it has no committee referred to. Is it being referred to? Yeah. Well, I guess first thing we need to do is move on first reader.
Yep, sure. Let's move it, sorry, and then Regina can answer. Ross is moving it. Can I get a second?
Second.
And then I'll go to Regina really quickly.
Okay. Basically, I asked the question this morning if that ordinance should go to a committee, and I was told to read the staff report that David wrote. So I'm going to turn this over to David.
David did it.
I mean, I think that there's a good rationale for doing this, but it certainly needs to be heard by a committee. So rules make sense to me. Housing and Human development makes sense to me as well. Either one of those or both.
David, will it delay it?
There's no big time crunch on this that I know of.
What's the number on this again, Mr. Mayor?
2520.
025.
It's 02520.
Thank you.
Alderman Gay, then Alderman Finlayson. Okay, I'm going to go to Alderman Finlayson now.
Sorry,
Thank you.
Oh, my bad.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just reading here the staff report. And so would you be able to explain to me, I guess, City Manager Gerald, it says if the city does not convey this property, the city would have to join in the subdivision as a property owner and show the existing right-of-ways as abandoned. What does that line mean?
So the new units are going to actually be built on the existing right-of-way. So we don't want to abandon this and still abandon it as a road and allow them to build on it, and we still be a property owner of the property under these new residential units. So what we want to do is convey it over to the developer, and then when they're finished with the development of the new roads that we would take ownership, they would convey the new roads to the city.
So we would still, it would be similar to Eastport Terrace or Harbor House where they own the individual properties, but the city still owns the roads through those properties.
And we would own the new roads as opposed to the old roads. So we turn over the old roads, they build on the old roads, build new roads and convey them to the city.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Alderwoman Finlayson, then Alderwoman Tierney.
Yes, my understanding is that in order for them to redevelop Newtown 20, they're going to have to rebuild the road, and they can't rebuild our road. So we convey the roads over to them so they can rebuild the roads, and then they will convey them back to us after the roads are completed. I'm not sure that there isn't some time sensitivity. We probably do have enough time to put it through our normal process, but I wouldn't want us to delay it any longer because they do expect all demolition to be done by September, which means we've got July because we're not in session in August. So I would just keep that in mind.
Thank you, Alderwoman Tierney.
Yeah, I support that concern. I just for liability reasons, if they're going to start demolition, within their limits of construction, we want to make sure that this is resolved so we don't have that liability when they start digging. So is it okay, David? Are we going to make it in time if this goes through the regular legislative process?
Well, let's think about it. So this is first reader. Next meeting will be the public hearing, and then I'll have to go to the committees. Are the committee meetings before the second meeting in July, Regina? City Clerk Watkins?
The rules come.
As long as rules can hear it before the second council meeting in July, then we can make it by the end of July.
Question though, is it a code thing? I don't understand why it isn't just a legal transaction of some sort. Why does this require this?
I can address that, or city attorney can. So anytime that we convey property over to another party, the council has to approve that by ordinance.
Okay, even though we get it back in a different form, right? Okay.
Alderman Gay has his hand up.
Yeah, sorry, a couple quick questions. So this would only be for the construction of Court B, which is Brooks Court, and then Court A, which is Betsy Court.
Sorry, I didn't hear your question. I can't hear you very well.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. This would only be for Court A, which is Brooks Court, and then Court B, which is Brooks Court, and then Court A, which is Betsy Court.
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if Sally is still on and might know the answer to that, but I don't know. Let me look at the exhibit real quick because I know that.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, I'm asking because I know that main road stretches through another property, but would it also still count under the Newtown development when, you know, in terms of fixing the road and when we have like public transit on that road, but they also fix, I'm just seeing if we could get multiple things done in one.
Do you mean beyond their property?
Well, I guess I'm trying to figure out, where that line ends. Does it go down the road that connects to Newtown, or does it only start at the very, very top, which would be right next to the current rec center, and then splitting between the two current streets, Betsy and Brooks?
I'm not sure, but we have plans online for the proposed redevelopment. It's actually going to the Planning Commission Wednesday for their plan development, and it can show. I can look before then about the roads.
And so with the process of, because looking at the proposed development, it would clearly not be this this current route. It's completely different. So
it's a different configuration.
Yeah, how does that work with them then turning it back over to the city?
I think is that another ordinance, David? If they are going to be deeding property back to the city?
I don't. Again, City Attorney Lyles can weigh in, but I don't think that requires an ordinance to accept conveyance of property to the city.
No, the only thing that requires the ordinance is when we release or sell property, dispose of property.
And sorry, my last question then is just,
that's not.
Is there, does this within this written agreement that you'd be sending to it looks like the only signature that's left is for City Attorney Lyles. Within that agreement, I'm not reading where it says that they would do so afterwards, or is this just something that's assumed? I think I'm right.
Yeah, I don't think they would want the road. So it's in their interest to give it back to the city. It's sort of understood that once we approve their plan development, that there will be a condition that they give that part of the road back to the city for to be in the city's ownership. So it will be part of their plan development approval.
Okay, you still on? Sorry. Reason up on us there. Okay, it's only on first reader, so we have some time. Alderman Arnett.
It is going to be coming to rules?
No, it was only going to housing and human welfare.
Well, are they meeting in time?
I'd like to request it to come to rules.
Yeah,
I've already done that.
Yeah.
Okay, got that, Regina?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all those in favor of O-25-20 on first reader, say aye with a show of hands. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Just quickly, I had a tech glitch and I didn't get any clarification on the last answer at all.
So
I couldn't hear your last answer.
You froze out, Alderman Gay. So
yeah, I know. So I wish we would have waited until I could have possibly gotten back in before taking a vote.
Let's get an answer for you now, buddy.
If there is no written, so we're just again assuming that they would. What if they say we don't want to give the vote back? We would like to own this as a part of our property.
They're not going to do that.
It would be very doubtful that they would do that.
Nobody wants to own a city street, but cities.
Right. But it will also be part of their plan development approval. So they'll be bound by the approval that the Planning Commission gives them.
They've probably got a couple extra streets they want to give you if you want to take care of them.
Yeah.
Yes. Our public works department is often trying to get rid of our or at least not take on new ones. But
thank you. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next on the agenda.
Yes, next item is 01920, public hearings. First reader.
No. Oh.
I'm sorry, second reader.
Second reader. All right, I'm just catching up here.
I'll move for adoption on second reader.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Alderman Arnett. And who pushed it off, Alderman Arnett? Is this you?
I did.
Alderman Savage.
Yeah, just to make sure it jives with 0520, which was passed earlier in terms of kind of separating our meetings to public hearings, and then ones where we're doing more business. And so, because currently the way this 01920 is worded is, it says that an ordinance that's been introduced on first reader and referred to the Planning Commission shall not be scheduled for public hearing before the City Council. I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong one. So if you're looking at legislation, page 1, line 41, so the hearing shall be advertised as required by law and shall be held no later than the second City Council meeting following the passage on first reader. So that second, and to Alderman Gay's concern about delaying legislation unnecessarily, I think this no later than the second meeting, we could change that to say no later than the, just no later than the next special City Council meeting, because that would make it so that the special council meetings are where we're going to be having public hearings. So this would make sure that would happen at the next scheduled one of those.
Alderman Arnett had his hand up.
So are you interpreting second to mean 1-2 as opposed to the second meeting of the month? Because the second meeting of the month is the special meeting. So no later than the second. Okay, following the passage, you're right. So it does have to be fixed to be consistent with the special hearing legislation. So no later than the next special hearing?
I think you just strike second and put next special. So no later than the next special City Council meeting.
Is that a motion?
Yes, assuming the law office will say that works or not.
Regina or Mike?
That's a Mike question.
Mike? So they're striking some language in this.
Yeah, I was just looking at it. Yeah, striking that would be fine. So it would take out second. It's easy enough to do, but that's, you got to vote on the amendment now.
Okay.
And it'll say from second to next City Council.
Next special City Council meeting.
Next special City Council meeting.
And we have that all right, Regina?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We have,
and we have a second.
Finlayson still has some discussion.
Just a question. So are we on page 1, line 41 is where we're making this change?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a first and a second for an amendment to O-19-20. All those in favor with a show of hands say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
No. Were there 3 of us who voted that time?
Okay.
I move O-19-20 as amended.
Right.
So second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor with a show of hands say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
Mr. Mayor, I want to be added as a sponsor, and I wanted to thank the Office of Law for making this fix so quickly it was a source of confusion, and I think we've made it all copacetic now, so thank you.
And you can add me as a co-sponsor as well, please.
Gotcha.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item, Regina.
Third reader is an ordinance.
Sorry. Can I get a motion for third read?
Mr. Mayor, I apologize. It's on the consent calendar as a well, you pulled it off, so you do need to do a third reader.
Third? Okay. Can I get a motion on that, please?
So move.
Second?
Second.
Just a question,
Alderman Savage.
Mr. Mayor, sorry. For the city attorney, on page 2, line 7, do you think that needs to get changed at all? Upon a majority vote in the affirmative, the second public hearing shall be held at the next scheduled city council meeting. I guess that should be fine. That should also help ensure things don't get slowed down.
You know what? I don't think we need to change it because it's going to go to the next special city council meeting. That is the scheduled council.
Okay. Okay, just check. Thank you.
Yeah, we have a first and second on third reader. Do a roll call, Regina?
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley?
Yes.
Alderman Rodriguez?
Yes.
Alderman Gay?
Yes.
Alderman Savage?
Aye.
Alderman Arnett?
Aye.
Alderwoman Tierney?
Aye.
Alderman Payon? Alderwoman Pendle Charles?
Aye.
Alderwoman Finlayson?
Aye.
And that motion carries.
Right. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda. Regina? Oh, sorry.
We can't hear you, Mr. Lyles.
I'm sorry. R3520, 2021 election dates, and an MOU with Anne Arundel County to execute those elections.
So I had asked for this to be, I move R3520.
Yep. And can I get a second?
Second.
Second.
So I had pulled this off to be, to consider the change from the September primary to the July primary. I assume since we went ahead and passed the ordinance change on first reader, we should consider that in this resolution as well.
Regina?
I'm not sure what exactly he's asking.
So we're on R3520, is that right?
It's on first reader.
Right.
And I had asked that it be pulled so that we could offer an amendment. We could approve it on first reader, but offer an amendment to change the primary date from September to July, just as we are offering in the charter amendment. I don't know that either are going to pass, but.
So Alderman Arnett, at this point, you're on first reader. So are you asking that it be referral to rules and housing like this charter amendment? Okay.
And Mr. Laws is going to clarify that.
Yeah, you don't want to pull this because time is of the essence. The two bills have almost nothing to do with each other. This is about process. We have an MOU that we must execute with Anne Arundel County so we get the benefit of their services. And the election board, our election board, has to approve certain processes prior to August.
But if we just passed on first reader the charter amendment, which was to change the primary date from September to July, if we pass this, keeping it in September, aren't we mooting the ordinance, the charter change?
Mr. Lyles?
I think that the fact that this would be an ordinance would be easy to change.
It's a resolution.
It's always harder to change. So I don't think that there would be a problem if we needed to change the date to go ahead and change the MOU. All those things would be easily effectuated. The charter just has these timelines that are so long that requires us to act on that pretty quickly. This, however, if the dates change, we'll just change the MOU and we'll hopefully pass a budget that reflects the change from an execution standpoint.
I guess I'm still confused because this sets the dates of the primaries, does it not? Yes, September 21st, 21 and November 2nd, 21. Oh, that's in the, no, that's on line 42 of the resolution. So this isn't an ordinance, it's a resolution.
It doesn't set the dates because the dates are set by charter. What it's doing is saying, we give you permission to go to Anne Arundel County and do an MOU with them to do these things.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. I understand now.
Tierney?
Yeah, you may hear my husband cooking dinner in the background. But anyways, out of respect, the last work session we had, I know she's my constituent, Eileen Leahy, the Board of Supervisors of Election, and we discussed this. So I just think that this is something that we shouldn't dispute, but I'm also getting correspondence as we speak on why, even with the charter amendment, that they hadn't even received a draft copy of it. I think we just have to be respectful of the Board of Supervisors of Election on both this, and I know we previously spoke about the charter, but just they have to be in the loop here. And they, out of courtesy, presented to us at the work session so that we could have hashed all this stuff out at that time. So I just want you to be sensitive to that.
Well, we did discuss it at the work session.
Yeah, we did.
I don't think they were warm to it, but it's not like we're dropping this concept on them afresh.
Well, I'm referring back to the date change is a complete surprise to them. And we're not talking about that now, but as far as the process, we did discuss the process at the work session.
And the date changes.
Michael's nodding his head.
This is just about authorizing an MOU.
I know.
To get service for free from the county. And we have to do it quickly.
It's not free.
Well.
All right. Anyway, it's on first reader. Alderman Gay.
Again, I'm having issues with Granicus tonight for some reason. Is this under the attachments for me aren't working. Like, you know, a little box underneath that says view attachment.
Regina or Julian?
Alderman Gay, could you please repeat your question?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the drop-down attachment is not working for me. So I can read it's not.
For the which piece of legislation are you speaking of? Are you talking about the charter amendment?
R3520.
R3520?
Yeah, for the purpose of authorizing it, yeah.
Okay. Takia will email that bill to you. Okay. Or we'll have Jacqueline do it. Give her a second.
Just let us know when you get that, Alderman Gay.
I mean, I'm agreeing with it. I just want to be able to have it for pass. I know this was in regards to vote by mail, correct?
Yep.
No.
What do you say?
No, it's not about voting by mail. That's the ordinance. This is a resolution to do the MOU.
It's about the MOU with the county, Alderman Gay.
Oh, I'm in the wrong thing. Hold on. I'm just waiting on that email then. I don't have to be a part of this. That's fine. I'll abstain from this vote.
Good.
We're just going to vote it in on first reader, so there is time. We have a motion for 35-20 and a second. With a show of hands, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
No.
Yeah. This isn't the budget, Fred.
I feel much better now.
All
It
right.
was Ellie's night to be a no vote.
Mr. Yeah.
But he does it because he's hungry.
Who isn't hungry? I'm starving.
Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
That ends the agenda for tonight.
All right.
I move that we adjourn.
Oh, no, wait.
Is there anything else for good order?
Yes.
Second.
Gotta be fast.
No, wait. Wait, I do.
Attorney?
Yeah, for the good of the order, since I've been such a Grinch tonight. So engineering is about fixing problems, and I want to give credit to the acting DPW director before she leaves on the fix on Compromise Street, to Masha and her department for installing. Oh, we have a picture. Thank you. This is a temporary solution to the flooding at Compromise Street. And I know sometimes people notice when something happens, but they don't necessarily notice when something doesn't happen, which has been the flooding on Compromise Street. And I think David is probably the best to describe this. This is otherwise known as Gavin's Wall, but this is a temporary fix. I'm not sure of the power, of the pump inside, but we have a diesel pump that you see that's pumping. And this is the aftermath of the recent rain where we still have some, a little seepage, a little bit left there for the ducks to swim in. And that's what they were doing this morning. So there you have it. That's another way of, sometimes, especially with this whole budget discussion, this is stuff that the city does, and you don't know this. And this is really what matters. I mean, we're servicing our residents with something like this, so we don't have that inconvenience of detouring around Compromise Street. So I just want to do a huge shout out to DPW and David, of course, and Gavin's Wall.
Your wall.
No, I had nothing to do with this. This is just.
Did that go through HPC? I don't think that's historically correct.
They're historic cinder block.
Temporary.
He said it's temporary.
Life safety.
Second motion to adjourn.
And I think Alderman Rodriguez had his hand up for something, no?
That was a second to adjourn.
Oh.
You don't like my diesel pump.
Bless you, my son.
Okay. Well, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Have a good night.